Did you have a difficult childhood and you're wondering how that affects your intimate relationship? In this video, I'm going to teach you what childhood trauma is and how to overcome it so you can build a satisfying and enduring relationship with your partner. Hi, it's Gabrielle, and for over 12 years, I've been a licensed professional counselor and relationship expert in private practice in Boulder, Colorado. And my practice is grounded in the science of what makes relationships work. Today, I'm going to teach you why childhood trauma is such a big deal when it comes to adult intimate relationships. You'll learn some of the downsides of traditional approaches to working with childhood trauma that a lot of therapists don't know, and what you can do to resolve childhood trauma once and for all. Let's dive in. First of all, what is trauma? Trauma occurs when you're exposed to an actual life threat or something you perceive as a life threat. Either way, this exposure produces a reaction of shock, horror, or terror in you. It's important to note that you don't necessarily need to be the victim of the threatening experience yourself. It could be that you heard about, saw, or witnessed someone else experiencing this threat, like if you witnessed a car accident or a murder. We call this kind of trauma vicarious trauma, and it can be just as serious as if you had been the direct victim of the life threat yourself. Regardless of whether you were the direct victim or you experienced vicarious trauma, when you're exposed to this frightening event, it overwhelms your nervous system. What do I mean by nervous system overwhelm? In order to understand this, it's helpful to understand how your nervous system functions in everyday life. Ordinarily, you experience highs and lows throughout the day. You have moments of excitement and moments of relaxation. When you aren't experiencing trauma, these energy states are all within your bandwidth. You might get a little more excited or a little more relaxed or sleepy, but either way, these states are manageable for you. We say that these states are within what Dr. Dan Siegel calls your window of tolerance. You don't either get too overwhelmed by too much energy or shut down due to not having enough energy. But with trauma, something else happens. You go outside of your window of tolerance. You either go into a state of hyperactivation, where your blood pressure and heart rate ramp up and you feel anxious, panicked, or terrified, or you go into a state of hypoactivation, where your blood pressure and heart rate can drop and you feel dissociated, numb, or checked out. We call going either too high or too low going outside of your window of tolerance. Now, just because you're exposed to a life threat, are you necessarily going to go outside of your window of tolerance? No. If you're able to run away or fight back, you'll have successfully defended yourself from that scary or dangerous event. Now listen to this because it's important in terms of understanding trauma. Trauma only occurs when you're unable to exercise your natural self-defensive impulses in the face of threat. Let me say that again. Trauma only occurs when you're unable to exercise your natural self-defensive impulses in the face of threat. Here's what I mean when I'm talking about your natural self-defensive impulses. There are actually 4 of them. The first one is calling out for help and, of course, receiving protection from someone as a result of calling out. The second one is fighting back. The third one is fleeing or running away. And the fourth one is freezing. The reason trauma happens is because when you're exposed to that threatening experience, you can't do anything to help yourself. Trauma is not a state of mind, but more of a bodily state because all of that unexpressed, natural self-defensive energy gets stuck in the very cells of your body. It's like your body wants to fight or run, but something about the situation prevents you from being able to do so. Maybe you were being beaten by an abusive step-parent who was too big for you to fight against. Or maybe you were prevented from running away because the door was locked. Whatever the obstacle, you were stuck in that life-threatening situation and your nervous system went into overwhelm. Now there's a second kind of trauma that many people don't talk about. It's the trauma that happens when no one is there to comfort you in the aftermath of the trauma. One of the main reasons people get traumatized in the first place is not only because of the scary and dangerous event itself, but because no one was there to help them feel better afterward. The person is left totally alone with their own terror, and this creates a secondary trauma, which is discrete from the first trauma, the impact of the scary and dangerous event itself. Childhood trauma is any event that causes you to go outside of your window of tolerance when you're a child. Now, when we talk about childhood trauma, we're often referring to what we call relational trauma, meaning the trauma occurred in relation to a parent or primary caregiver. Childhood trauma can be a single event, like an episode of physical or sexual abuse, or it could be that you lived in an environment that was chronically traumatic, in which you experienced scary and dangerous events on a regular basis. Age does play a critical role in childhood trauma. The period from 0 to 12 years old is considered the attachment window. During that time, children develop a blueprint for how to bond with their parents that they then bring with them into their adult relationships. The child's brain is highly plastic, meaning it is in a particularly formative state. When trauma occurs during childhood, it can have a critical impact on the child's development. The brain gets a major upgrade at 13 years old, as well as at various intervals across the rest of the lifespan. If you didn't experience anything traumatic until your teen years and you had a non-traumatic childhood, you're going to have better brain resources to weather a traumatic experience as an adolescent than you would have when you were 4 years old, for example. When you're a little child, many of the neural connections, especially in your neocortex, have not yet taken shape. Now that I've given you some basics about trauma and childhood trauma in particular, we can return to the focus of this video. What is the link between childhood trauma and adult relationships? Does childhood trauma lead to relationship problems in adulthood? As I said, you form a basic relationship blueprint based on the experiences that you have with your parents and primary caregivers when you're little. That blueprint will inform how you relate in your intimate relationships once you become an adult. Unfortunately for many, that childhood blueprint was a traumatic one, involving abuse, neglect, ridicule, and shame. If this sounds like what you experienced as a child, these experiences will cause problems for you in your adult intimate relationships until you resolve them. Your intimate relationship is unique because it's what we call an attachment relationship. That means that your intimate relationship is a lot like your early relationships with your parents when you were little, when you were dependent on those people to keep you safe. Your brain maps your early relationships with your parents onto your relationship with your partner. This does not occur, at least not to the same extent, in any other type of adult relationship you have. This explains why people with childhood trauma can be very functional in all of their relationships with their friends, their coworkers, their neighbors, but when it comes to their relationship with their significant other, they can fall apart. Most people are at least somewhat familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a stress disorder that can affect victims of trauma. But you may have also heard the term complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and wonder what it is, how it relates to regular PTSD, and if it has anything to do with childhood trauma. PTSD can be caused by a single episode trauma, like a natural disaster or a car accident. But in contrast, complex PTSD is a term used to describe the trauma that results when a person is subjected to long-term, chronic traumatic experiences. Unfortunately, childhood trauma often involves ongoing psychological, physical, or sexual abuse, or periods of isolation and neglect. Now, complex PTSD has some important hallmarks that I want to share with you here. The first one is that trauma has a formative effect on your sense of self. It becomes part of your identity. You may not remember what it was like to live without trauma because it was so much a part of your experience growing up. Children only know what they grow up with, It's the only normal they have. So if you grew up with regular exposure to trauma, you might never have thought that there was anything wrong. You simply believe that this is just how life works. And this makes it much more likely that you're going to repeat those types of traumatic experiences when you become an adult. The second thing is that shame plays a major role with complex PTSD. Many survivors of complex PTSD blame themselves for what they went through. And you can see how that's probably a different attitude than for an adult, let's say, who survived a car accident. When children are abused or neglected by parents, they need to find a way to maintain that sense of connection to the parent, despite the mistreatment. They can't blame their parents when they're little, so the best way to survive is to think that there must be something wrong with them. When the child blames themselves, it actually serves an important self-defensive function, because if they were to fight back or try to get away, that could actually make things worse for them. When the child blames themselves, it protects the parent from the guilt that they would feel if they really acknowledged how they're hurting the child. Now that you've seen the hallmarks of complex PTSD and the impact of childhood trauma on adult relationships, let's explore the best therapy approaches for childhood trauma. Of course, individual therapy is a very popular approach to working with childhood trauma, but clients with complex PTSD often end up in individual therapy because they're having problems in their intimate relationships. One of the drawbacks of going to individual therapy to work on problems that are arising in your intimate relationship is that your individual therapist does not have the benefit of seeing you and your partner interact. They only get your side of the story. And it's a well-established fact that people don't perceive their problems accurately. And this is all the more so when it comes to our relationship problems. That's why it can be very powerful and effective to go to couples therapy to work on your relationship problems, whether they arise from individual trauma that happened to you when you were a child or anything else, so that your therapist can see the problem in real time in their office, rather than relying exclusively on your description of the problem. There's a reason to treat childhood trauma in couples therapy. As many of the contributors to the field of relationship therapy agree, relationship therapy is the quickest and most effective way to resolve childhood trauma. As Dr. Harville Hendricks, founder of Imago Therapy, says, we are wounded in relationship and we heal in relationship. As Dr. Sue Johnson, founder of Emotionally Focused Therapy, says, there's no better place to heal than in the arms of someone you love. And as Dr. Stan Tadkin, founder of PACT, a psychobiological approach to couple therapy, says, couples should be each other's healers. The good news is that your intimate relationship is the very best place to create healing experiences that correct your early traumatic relationship blueprint. That way, you can build a new relationship blueprint of love, warmth, connection, and security with your partner. These new experiences in your relationship with the person closest to you are what will heal your childhood trauma. Now let's hear from you. Have you been the victim of childhood trauma? If so, what has helped you heal? Leave me your comments below. I look forward to reading them and seeing you in the next video. And if you benefited from what you learned in today's video, please make sure to give this a like and share it. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel right now. Just click on the subscribe button right here so that I can continue to bring you quality videos like this one. And please go to thepowercoupleformula.com for lots more information about how to build an amazing relationship, and powercoupleseducation.com to stay connected.